Hello and welcome to another analysis for Queensland League Scene. My name is Lee Addison. I'm from rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. Indeed, I'm the owner of that. And every week I analyse the Intrust Super Cup sides or the Premiership sides that are running around. We started this last year in 2022 and we're continuing it into 2023. The Dolphins have taken the NRL by storm. Yet their brethren at the state level have yet to win a game. Granted, their first game got washed out, I believe. Their second game was and third games didn't result in a win. Now, one thing you will see is a theme of my analysis at the minute is the obsession that teams seem to have with playing down the middle of the field and then using a half on either side. And then the obsession with using the front man. So when you have a front man and a back man, or in the ladies' game, obviously using the female term, there seems to be an obsession with hitting the front option. To be fair, in the ladies' game, this doesn't seem as common. They tend to play with a bit more instinct. And I think this is a result of a lot of our development programs over the years that have put too much structure into players. And I will say this at this juncture, that when Queensland had their most successful origin period, when they won so many straight, most of their players were quite instinctive. Let's hope that they're not getting overcoached at junior levels. If you have a look at the Dolphins, the Redcliffe Dolphins, that's the state league team. And I must suggest that I don't know if they're actually the same club or not, because some of their players had to go to the Capras to play as a feeder team. They really do seem to struggle in good ball at the minute. I did do something similar a year ago with the Redcliffe Dolphins, and they similarly struggled in good ball, but yet they went through to the grand final. One thing that many people are suggesting is they don't have the benefit of the Warriors players as feeders, and they don't have the benefit of their own Dolphins, all their own Dolphins coming down. I mean, indeed, in the Capras analysis last week, Anthony Milford was playing at 6. So there is definitely a clientele issue, if you like. That doesn't mean this clientele isn't good enough, but obviously they've got different players or players maybe not of the same calibre. But as always on Queensland League Scene, as always in all my analyses, I'm always looking at the tactics. I very rarely mention players. So we're looking at the shapes, looking at the direction, and we're looking at the choices that the players possibly should have taken. I hope you like my backdrop. I'm in my home office and there's the map of Queensland there. So let's share the screen, eh? Redcliffe are attacking from your right and they're playing against the Burleigh Bears. As you see, you saw already there, you saw a block play of sorts. Now, as I pause the tape, look at number 11, look at number 4, look at number 13 on the left side. They're just looking at the ball. They're not looking at the defensive line. 19 is looking sideways. Number 8, to be fair, he's probably looking at the defensive line. Right now, you would think the ball might be coming left to 13. Let's see how good their disguise is. No, the 9 has opened his body up, and it looks like he's going to roll out a little bit, and number 8 is going to take the football. So as it turned out, number 8, the only person who was looking at the defensive line, is the one who's made the carry. Now, also looking at the push through, number 15, and I think this is number 12, they're not within cooey of the play. I would like to see number 12 or number 15 pushing into this hole here. Maybe number 15 coming across to push into this hole here and 12 into that one. The push is basically too far away. But 13, 10, 11 and 4 on this side have told no lies whatsoever. To be fair to 10, he played the ball, I think. So, look, there's nothing too much wrong with the carry. The carry's fine, even though he does get flipped on his back. Now, the 9 has made no attempt to disguise his pass here. There is a little bit of a push through on the right here. Can't see the number. But clearly, the Burleigh defenders aren't taking the bait because they're all looking in at the ball. So there's no subterfuge on that right side. So I'm already saying to you that I believe Redcliffe are a little bit readable in attack. Based on what we see at this juncture, I'm thinking number 19 might get the ball. Indeed, he does. I do like the way his hips are quite square. I do like the way number 13 is nice and flat. So in theory, he could get this ball. I do like the depth of 7. 11 is taking his lead off number 7, as is number 4. So this is a front man, back man option down at the bottom there. And I think this is number 1 looping around. So this isn't an uncoached side by any stretch. But I would just argue that they're probably a bit too structural at the minute and not necessarily taking in the information that's coming above them, because they've gone to number 11, they've gone to the front man. And just like last week, if they'd have moved the ball out, if they'd have gone 1, 4, and then the wing, look at what they would have found there. Now, the argument can always be they were playing short so they can go wide later. But with a 20-0 scoreline at halftime to the opposition and 0 being that of the Redcliffe Dolphins, you could argue that their strategy isn't working in attack. So, look, once you've gone into the line like that, quite often the short side can be open. But number 4, again, just looking at the ball, number 1 looking at the ball, nobody's taking in information with regards to the defensive line. Number 1 has started to now, and they did show a little bit. I mean, if nothing else, that's a 3-on-3 scenario there, so it could have worked. The number 7's in at dummy half, gets caught. I am a little bit alarmed there at the lack of options. So this is what is so common. I was even coaching last night at a club, and halves and organisers will set up a couple of settlers, if you like, and then they'll go for some kind of shift. If that doesn't work out, what happens next? And I guess that was an example there, that they just looked a little bit lost there, Redcliffe. And they just had a very basic carry into the line that looked like an accident. Anyway, the ball comes out. Number 19 again. Number 10, I'd like to see number 10 playing some kind of role here, holding the defensive line up, looking like he's going to engage the defensive line. Instead, he's well behind the play there. Not criticising him. He might be cream crackered. We have shifted, but again, there's nothing between the two pivots there. But we do have what looks like number 13 coming back on the inside, and I can't see this number here. My problem with number 9 is he's so horizontal at the minute. If he keeps running horizontally, he'll end up in the hot dog stand. So, again, that play can be executed so much better, and the timings were a little bit off. Now, when players have to run horizontally like this, you tend to find that they don't have the absolute clarity they need in terms of conducting their set. And I certainly wouldn't want my middlemen to be wasting too much time moving laterally, because I do feel that you've got to try and preserve their energy. And certainly the pivotal players, if they can sort of stay calm and allow the ball to do the work, it certainly helps them. So let's have a look what we've got here. We've got some form of shape on the left. So 13, 10 and 7. 7 being the backman option for number 13, if you like. 1's joining the party late, but the ball does go right. Number 12 coming into the line, into a hole, and there's a dink through, and there's a repeat set option. Nothing came of it. Now, one thing I do want to say about the Dolphins is a couple of times from putting their shoulders under the ball, they managed to get Burley to cough up some possession. But here they are again. Number 8, I mean, look how involved he's been earlier doors. There's certainly no criticism of his game. But one thing that's also a concern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 Redcliffe players in that screen. You can almost throw a blanket over them. To me, they should be transitioning from defence to offence, getting good shape, getting good attack in the shape, looking at the defensive line and having a look at what can and can't be attacked. And again, some of them have got the back turned. Most of them are looking at the ball. There's no shape there, to be quite frank. It's actually quite slow and laboured. So what that does is it allows the Burley defence to get set again. So Redcliffe need another settler. Let's analyse the shape now. Again, it looks a bit of an afterthought, looking in at the ball. Number 1's gesticulating there. Number 7 is getting to the point now where he needs to tear around the opposite side of the field. One thing I always say to my 7s and 6s is that the defensive line will follow where you go. So if you make a late run like this, the defense will tend to adapt. And indeed, there are defenders adapting to that. And the ball comes through again to the other pivot. And they're trying to play through the line by the looks, but number 13 didn't turn up into a hole. The one outside in turned up a little late. So, look, 3 plays, and they've only just gone down one channel of the field. Now, what I would like to see from here now, if I was coaching this side, is the ball get moved away from this area and then attack back here, because that would suggest to me they were trying to tire those players out. But my gut tells me that they were just struggling to put their sets together and there was some confusion. So to me, they've wasted 3 plays there, really. And again, I'm going to stop and look at the shape. There's a late reaction to number 1. I don't know if this is part of their strategy to move late, but everyone's looking at the ball. Nobody's taking in the information of the defensive line. There's nothing that looks like it's going to arrest any defenders sliding across. One of my friends made a comment that Burley defended really well. Well, I would say based on this so far that Redcliffe didn't attack too well. And again, they've gone for the crash ball. I mean, look at all this space here. So they're simply not looking up at the defensive line, guys. And they're trying to get their structures sorted almost on the field. It sort of feels like they're trying to work it out while they are there. There is some element of front man and back man. I do understand that, and I do appreciate that. And I do like the fact that that big bopper then came in to move the ball. I do like the fact that this pivot now has front man, back man options. Again, I would suggest he probably needs to go to the back man. He does. And then look at what basically opens up. Now, I have this discussion with a lot of people all the time. I was having a chat with an NRL winger a couple of weeks ago, and I said, why do you always come in field? So why do you always come in field to when really if you hog the touchline, you might just crash over? And he said to me that it was to keep the opposition guessing as to the line of run, and I understand that. But I think if you're not the fastest wing in the world, he needs to hog the touchline. He needs to have attacking shape. Because if he'd have received the ball here where my cursor is, he strolls over. Instead, because he's coming from into out, I'll just try and rewind the tape a little bit there to give you some kind of idea. Because he's coming into out, he actually gives himself the opportunity to get caught. And I think that is a concern. So look, if he'd have caught that where my cursor is now, so if he was stood where my cursor is now, hip square, I think he'd have made that. And you'd back your wing to score from here, but obviously the quality of the pass, because he had to reach out for it, probably wasn't the best. He's ended up coming into the defender. His opposite defender is probably faster than him, and he's ended up getting caught. So there's another issue with not looking up at the defensive line and taking in the information. So they've had a shot. What they're going to do now? And again, I would argue that they've got no other option but to kick across field. Look how many players aren't participating in the game here. They're just watching it. And I always say to my players, if you want to watch a game, buy a ticket. So, yeah, there's a couple of sets there that haven't looked great. We're going to go through the rest now a lot quicker and not stop and start, or else this will be the longest segment in history. Again, going down the middle of the field, and I personally like to defend against teams that go down the middle of the field because it's quite easy to read. The other thing is quite often these teams don't do anything until play 3. I think that's play 2. We're now going to a pivot who now goes... Look, at least it's a little bit of something different. But again, the core skills weren't great. And again, it looks a little bit ad hoc. It doesn't look like people are playing to a great structure. There is a little bit more looking up at the defensive line now, to be fair. But the quality of the passing is very average and they look disorganised, quite frankly. So quite a lot of work to do at the half-time juncture in this game at the very least, and I do have some second half clips to show you to see if anything did improve. Again, number 4 just looking at the ball, good carry from number 15 there, absolutely no problem. I love the way you hit and spin. But I'm looking at this defensive line, and they're not having to do that much in terms of lateral movement, in terms of changes of direction. Redcliffe are quite readable, and they can slide quite easily. They're playing back to the middle now, so those Burley defenders didn't have to move very much at all laterally, and they dealt with that quite easily and really killed that ruck. Again, we're going back man a little bit now, but it looks like they get a little bit lost on the back man play. And then that's what happens when you pass long close to the defensive line. I'll show you one clip from the second half. Here they are. The number 3 is obviously identified. He can try and skip outside his opposite number. And again, that's a very reasonable suggestion and a reasonable tactic. Number 2 doing nothing on the short side there. A little bit of push through, but it's a bit too far back, if you ask me. Again, I do think the players are looking up a bit now. I mean, number 12 actually pointed at the defensive line, which is a clear indication that he's taking in the information. But the ball does go on the other side, and Burley are ready for that. And when you do a hit up going back towards the post, like the Dolphins just did then, the Burley defenders just moved across. What I think he'll do is I'll rewind the tape and show you. So here we are. We've got a tackle here. So if they'd have shifted now, and I know it's not the ideal play the ball, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think there is there Burley defenders, or 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 in the screen there, which means full back out there somewhere. And it means that you've only got one player there. So if they'd have shifted from here, they'd have at least got a passive tackle at the top of our screen. Instead, what they do is they move the ball into the scrum line area, if you like, and the Burley defenders just shift across. And now they've got more defenders over there to deal with anything over there. So they've essentially taken the Burley defence to where they want to attack, and then they wonder why there's no space to attack, and they have to try and play through it. That wasn't a bad play. It wasn't a bad carry. No problems there. But again, what are they contributing to the defensive line? What's the cause and effect of what they're doing now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Burley defenders on this side of the post, which means there's only 6 on this side of the post. That suggests to me they should be moving the ball to the right. They don't. They go to the 7. So another clear indication that they're not looking at the defensive line. And look at this play too. I mean, there's absolutely no room in which to play here. So you're trying to play in such a small area, front man, back man option. Even if they did hit the back man, Burley would have closed it down quite easily. So they're really clunky in their attack at the minute. There's absolutely no two ways about that. When in doubt, they send in one of the big fellas in to carry the ball. And I will say this, their carries have been excellent. There's no dramas there. Let's look at the defence again now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it looks like once again they're trying to go to the 7. Now, that's okay from a strategy point of view. It looks like they're trying to tire those men out. But because they're not really throwing that much at them, they're not making them think on the spot. They're not making them work too hard. And again, they're just running out of play there. I would have liked to have gone to the back man there because they might have exposed this one defender here. Instead, this obsession with going to the front man that's endemic in our game is a real problem, and players are trying to follow structure too much and are not actually looking up at what is going on. And obviously, poor quality ball there. Last couple of sets. Can't argue with the players, can't argue with their effort, can't argue with the way they're carrying the football. Absolutely no problems with their go forward. What it is, though, is the structure of their sets and the way they are trying to find space and find options on the field. When they do go outside a little bit, they tend to be found wanting a little bit with their outside passing to the edges. So core skills are definitely an issue. Let's look at the rest of the set. This is the last one we're looking at. Again, they go in back around about the middle, but you can tell there's no runners coming onto the ball. There's nobody coming to ask questions of the defensive line. So I would argue Burley have had quite a good defensive display because they didn't have that much asked of them. and the Dolphins really look like they're struggling to put their sets together. There's all sorts of reasons for this. It could be that the clientele haven't trained together that much. Sorry, the players, they're not clientele. The players haven't trained together that much because of the club scenario in terms of feed of this and feed of that. And then just to prove a point, 1 minute they do throw something different. They try and get outside the defence. And I spoke earlier about number 3 trying to get outside his opposite number. Look at this, skips out, gets over the top. He managed to find a weak shoulder of number 3, the left shoulder, his opposite number, and a great ball out to number 2. So the upshot of what I'm saying is there that the skill is there in the players, but it's got to be unlocked by coaches. And I must add the caveat right now that last year I was quite critical of Redcliffe's attack at this stage of the season. It was actually 1 year ago today, as I'm recording this, that I did the Redcliffe analysis last year and it got to the grand final. So these things can change over time, but it's clear to me that there's a lot of work needs to go on. rugbyleaguecoach.com.au if you like the sound of what you've heard. Take care. I'll see you again on Queensland League Scene.